Okay, so I just watched Die Another Day. Right, where to begin? It's difficult. I posted before I put the video. I watched the film that I was about to do it, and some people said exactly what I've said about Die Another Day for many many years. That it is like a football match. It's very much a film of two halves. Um, and I used to say the first hour is maybe one of the best Bond movies ever made, and the last hour is one of the worst. I don't know. I think I'm watching it again. I think I'm right. The first hour is good, but I think I might have been highballing it just a little bit. I think I might have been bigging it up just a bit too much, and it really. Oh, where to begin? Okay, well, let's start with the gun battle. Let's start with where all Bond films should start. That's me talking to the Daniel Craig era. The gun battle, I feel very, very precious with the gun battle. That the moment when I was a kid, the moment that white dot flashed across the screen, you used to get so excited. And I know sometimes it was the most excited you ever got because the rest of the film sometimes might not have been or lived up to the moment. But the gun battle is very important. And in this one, it's the one where David Arnold, I think, got the music bang on. I think he got it right. I think I liked what he did with the previous two in Tomorrow Never Dies and The World's Not Enough, but he got the music just bang on in this one. But then they do this weird thing, because it was the 20th movie and the 40th anniversary, where the bullet fires right at you. Yeah, like that, right? It comes right at you. And Bond manages to pull off one of the most spectacularly amazing shots of all time, where he not only manages to shoot the assailant who's aiming his gun barrel at Bond, he managed to get the bullet right down the gun barrel of the other person's gun. That's some shot, James. Well done. So even for James Bond, I think that's probably a bit ambitious. The pre-credits are great. I love that opening surfing scene. I think it's fantastic, and they have these three surfers, and apparently it's a bit of a record the way they did that. I don't know anything about surfing, but apparently it was quite a big deal. And they do the opening, the pre-credit sequence is pretty good. It's one of the better ones. And one of the better ones that Brosnan did. I always quite enjoy it. I like the grainy look, the North Korea, very bleak look. It looks very grim. It's treated in a way that looks very grey, very dank, almost black and white. It doesn't really have much colour or glow to it. And that's a bit of foreshadowing that we know that there's something ominous about to happen to James Bond. There's always this little thing that he did at the start where he's in the helicopter and he opens up the case and there's the diamonds in it and he lifts it up and he puts the C4 explosive in it and the detonator. I always think it's funny when they do things like that in films that it always just seems to fit perfectly. You know, that never happens in life. You know, you never put something in a case and then put the top bit on and it wobbles and it never quite fits and you're kind of like, oh, come on, and you've got to work it to... In films, it just fits. Anyway, so we meet Colonel Moon, we meet Zhao. Funny, we meet Colonel Moon, he's kicking a punch bag, which turns out to have someone inside it, and then he says, get me another therapist. These sassy lines don't work in another language. It's weird. They tend not to work when they're translated and they're done as subtitles. It doesn't really, it's a bit clunky and they shouldn't have really done it. But the whole pre-title sequence is fine, and but what's odd, there's an odd thing with this whole movie, and it's really prevalent in the pre-title sequence. The sound mix isn't great. The sound mix between the sound effects and music is a really bad mix, and sometimes the music just gets completely lost in the sound effects, and the sound effects are really sort of overbearing. And that's a common fault throughout the whole movie. I think that the sound mix is quite poor, and it's not just on my replay. I remember thinking that when I watched it in the cinema, that it didn't quite work and there was something not quite right. There's some pretty dodgy green screen as well at the start of this in the final battle between Moon and Bond on the hovercraft. There's some pretty poor sort of old school green screen going on, which is quite bizarre. So we have the pre-titles, and then we come to the title sequence and the song. Now, I've said for many years that when I first heard the song, I was absolutely appalled. I couldn't believe what they'd done. I was really excited about Madonna doing it. I thought it was a great choice. She'd done a great song for Austin Powers with Beautiful Stranger. She'd done some great songs, obviously. She's was one of the biggest artists in the world and one of the biggest selling artists of all time, and a big favourite of mine. Really excited, and I couldn't believe how bad the song was when I heard it. Then I saw the film, and actually in the titles, I think the song works quite well. That abstract nature of it fits in with the torture sequence, and for the first time they actually have scenes from the film in the title sequence, so they kind of continue the narrative through the title sequence, which has never really been done before that. So it was a fairly new thing to do, and I think it worked quite well. I think yeah, there's some good parts to it. So yeah, then we move on, and afterwards we've got Brosnan captured by the North Koreans. There's a scene at the moment. Brosnan's great in these early scenes. He's really good, and there's a couple of real good moments for Brosnan. He's got his stuff with General Moon in the prison is great, but when he's walking across the bridge, you really have a sense, just with his face and his expression, you have a sense that this is him saying, surely this isn't how I'm going to die. Surely after all I've been through and all I've done and all I've achieved, this isn't the way it's going to end. Shot in the back by North Korean soldiers. And you really get a sense of that he really feels this is the moment. This is when it's all going to fall apart. So I think Brosnan plays that really, really well. When he meets Zhao, and I've always wondered, with this film, he acts from the get-go, he acts as if him and Zhao have some kind of long-term beef going on, that they've been at it for decades, when they actually only met for about 3 minutes. And I know he's probably pissed off at him, but the way they act, and the way they work with each other, and the way they relate to each other, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's something to do with the fact he's had 14 months to fester and to think about this, and to really maybe that's where that's come from. But there is this sense that Zhao is a long-term enemy, and it's not really the case. But yeah, I can go over that, and maybe that is it. Maybe it's the 14 months stuck in a North Korean jail. By the way, I'm going to take a sip of wine, but I needed wine for this one. It's the first one I've had wine with. So then we're on the boat where Bond's being debriefed and checked over and medically checked over. Apparently Paul Darrow, who's an actor who I was lucky enough to get to know quite well through my work in convention work and stuff, and interviewed a few times, played Avon in Blake 7. Apparently Paul Darrow was in that scene. Much lamented. Paul sadly passed away recently, and he was one of the funniest men, the actual funniest men I've ever had the pleasure of spending time with. And I was lucky enough to have a few drinks with him, and he would smoke like a chimney and drink like a fish, and had a great old time, and he was a genuinely wonderful guy. Apparently he's in that hospital scene, but he got cut and he ended up on the cutting room floor, which he was quite annoyed about. So I'm always hoping to see Paul there. So yeah, it's funny when James Bond escapes from that boat. There's a scene where he gets up the top of the steps and some soldiers run by, and it says security breach on level 3. It was like, what, do these soldiers not know how to get to level 3? It's through that staircase that James Bond's just coming through. Come on. So then there's a moment I think is one of the coolest moments James Bond's ever had. If you can walk into a hotel lobby or reception area in pyjamas, soaking wet, with long hair and a beard, and still be the coolest person in that reception area, then you officially are winning. You are pulling it off, man. And Brosnan does that with aplomb. That's a wonderful scene. And I do like all the stuff in the hotel, and the Mr. Chang, the Chinese guy. He's a great character. He you can tell there's history there straight away. And that all works. It's all very Bond. And that's the thing, I'm going to come back to saying this, that the first hour is very, very, very Bond. It's very classic Bond, and it works in a very classic and classy Bond way. And that's why I think the first hour gets a lot of traction. I think people like it because it has that classic Bond feel. Even when then we go to Cuba and meet Raoul, and he is again a classic Bond sort of companion in a sense, that he's one of these a sleeper agent, but he's one of these contacts that is have a series of great characters throughout the Bond movies, and he's really good, and he gets your attention, and again you feel there's a chemistry there, there's a warmth between the characters that develop very quickly, and that works really well. There's lots of Bond references. There's lots of historical Bond references. There's obviously, again, this was the 20th film, it was the 40th anniversary, 18 years ago. My God, we're coming up to the 60th anniversary. How crazy is that? And there's lots of Bond. There's the Books of the West Indies reference, which was, of course, where Ian Fleming got the name James Bond. It was written by someone, good book called Birds of the West Indies, written by someone called James Bond. And all that stuff is great. But then we talk about this first hour being good, but there are, again, warnings that all is not great. Bond meets Jinx, and she comes out of the water like Domino from Dr. No, and not Domino, sorry, Honey from Dr. No. Terrible mistake. That's the wine. That's the wine. She comes out of the water like Honey from Dr. No. You know why I said Domino? Because Claudine Auger turned up in an episode of Sherlock Holmes I was watching the other night, a Jeremy Brett episode. And that's where that's come from. Anyway, so she comes out of the water like Honey from Dr. No. Just like the girl from Dr. No. 10cc. Go here. And then we have a really bad moment of dialogue. The opening scene and the opening dialogue between Jinx and Bond is bloody awful. It really is. It's such a cringe. Every single word, nothing works on it. And I get the impression the writers thought they were being really smart and clever and funny. And it was just, oh my God. This is the same guys that wrote Casino Royale. This is Purvis and Wade, the team, the sort of the script writing team who've done so many Bond movies and done such a good job in many other Bond movies. And they wrote this, and I'm really hoping that, and I'm guessing probably what is the case is one of these cases that, like with the job with all screenwriters and having worked on TV myself, and I know how it works. When you run your script, really when you pass it over and when day one of shooting begins, you really are limited in terms of your involvement. And I think this is one of these situations where it was probably rewritten on the set, probably by Lee Tamahori, who I think had a bit of an ego and made some major changes, one of which we'll come to later. And that could have been the case because it just doesn't work for two guys that actually are quite good writers. That one, just, no, it was dreadful. So yeah, we continue with a lot of the Bond references. We go to the Los Organos and the clinic where people get their DNA changed and basically, like Doctor Who, regenerate. And there's a reference to Scaramanga's Funhouse. Bizarrely, why does this clinic have all these weird and wonderful mirrors as you walk into it? Nothing else about it suggests that's the case. So it does kind of look like they're just trying to reference other Bond movies for the sake of it. It doesn't really work in terms of the narrative, and that's something I think starts to look clunky as the film goes on. It would have worked if they just left all that stuff to the one moment where it's really obvious, which is going to come up later. So yeah, again, we've got Zhao in the middle of this sort of very lengthy procedure to get his whole DNA changed, and yet seems to have a handy helicopter on standby with people to protect him, just in case he wants to escape at any point randomly, or in case an MI6 agent appears and, you know, blows his cover and he has to get away. That helicopter just seems to be very handy, doesn't it? And then, of course, we come to CGI number one. Yes, number one. CGI was fairly new at this point. But let's remember that we'd already had Jurassic Park, which still stands up today as a wonderful piece of CGI. And that was 10 years previous to Die Another Day. Die Another Day, it was almost like it was the first attempt at CGI anyone had ever made. In fact, it was almost like the first attempt at CGI that a 14-year-old media student had made in their bedroom. And the first one was when Jinx dives off the cliff. And it's dreadful. It's awful. It's not even video game bad. It's just awful. But not the worst. No, not even the worst. Can you believe that? So, then we meet Rosamund Pike as Miranda Frost. People like Rosamund Pike, and I like Rosamund Pike, And I've seen Rosamund Pike in films, and I think she's great, and I think she's a really good actress. For some bizarre reason, in this film, I think she's pretty dreadful. I don't think she's great. She may as well be walking around from the very first second we meet her, wearing a sign saying, "I'm a baddie." Oh, by the way, I'm a baddie. Did I tell you I'm a baddie? And I am actually a baddie. That's the sign she's wearing in every single second from the moment she appears on screen. It's so clear. And also, Toby Stephens, for some bizarre reason, decides to do a kind of Alan Bastard impression from The New Statesman. And this is again where it kind of goes wrong. They're all trying too hard. And what Toby Stephens doesn't seem to understand is the best villains are the ones with whom we actually kind of like them. And we have there's a quality about them that's charming, and that charm but disarm quality that Hannibal Lecter, for example, Anthony Hopkins pulls off so spectacularly. That's why he's so good at that, because he's charming and he's enigmatic and he's charismatic and he really draws you in, then bang, he does something spectacularly horrible, and that's what makes you realise, wow, this is the epitome of what a villain is, and where Toby Stephens and Rosamund Pike don't seem to get that. They just telegraph it from the start, and everything's one note and everything's one dimension, and you get no sense that they're trying to layer anything up here, particularly since this guy is someone who's gone through an entire personality regeneration. You'd think there'll be a lot to play with there, and yet Toby Stephens doesn't really work enough with it, and he doesn't do enough with it, and it's a shame, and it really lacks. And again, like Rosamund Pike, Toby Stephens as an actor I've seen who've been brilliant both on stage and in film, and he's a fantastic actor, and he's Maggie Smith's son, for God's sake. You know, how can't he be a fantastic actor? So again, maybe I'm coming back to Lee Tamahori, who I think made a lot of bad decisions, and it could have just been the direction these two actors had. They were both young, their first major film roles, and it was a Bond movie. You're probably going to do what you're told, so I'm kind of laying that at the door of the director. Fencing scene, excellent, fantastic. Madonna, really, is she as bad as people say she is? I don't think she is. I think it's cheesy. I think it's very Bond. I think the repartee between Madonna and Bond works far better than the one between Jinx and Bond in Cuba. And yeah, she's not Meryl Streep, but it's fine. It's Madonna making a cameo appearance in a Bond movie, and she's a bit naff, but it's fine. The fencing scene is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. One of the best Bond scenes of all time. I'd always wanted a fencing scene in a Bond movie, so I was delighted when this one came up and that we finally got one. And it's in an old English gentleman's club, which is even better. That's just classic Bond all over it. You could see Sean Connery doing that. You could see even Lazenby doing that. You could see Roger Moore doing it. Probably not as well. It requires a degree of agility, but it really is a wonderful scene, and I thoroughly enjoy it. And it's got some wit, it's got some style, it's got charisma, it's got all the things that you expect from a Bond movie. Then Bond gets the key, and he's back in the system again when he goes to Westminster. And funnily enough, after this film came out, I went to the Westminster Bridge, and I went down to the little door where Pierce Brosnan walks in. And when I walked in, it was just a cupboard. When I saw it, it was just a cupboard with it, and was open, and there was a little guy in there with some cleaning stuff and some litter picking stuff. It's always a little nook where people who work along the South Bank spend some time or have a rest. And there was a little piece of cardboard up, which just said, "Yes, James Bond was here, now piss off," which I thought was brilliant. So it's just a little cupboard that he goes into, and Bond gets brought back into the fold by M. Nice little scene between M and Bond. And I quite like that. It works quite well. And then we have this is the scene they should have left all the references to. So we go into Q's base, and it's got all the old gadgets in it. And as a Bond fan, it's a bit of fun. You know, you could have written this off as a bit of fun if that was the only thing they did. But because they'd done so many other things throughout the film, it kind of starts feeling a little bit wearisome now. You start to really feel that they're laying it on a bit too thick, that this is some kind of anniversary special. And it doesn't really, and it feels a bit clunky. And as a Bond fan, it's nice to see the crocodile in the back from Octopussy, and the shoe from Russia with Love, and the jetpack. Although it's not actually the shoe from Russia with Love. It's not even close to looking like Rosa Klebb's shoe. The jetpack, etc. You know, they're all there. and John Cleese, who just never really worked. He's one of my biggest heroes. I think one of my favourite comedy writers of all time. Fawlty Towers, my favourite show, one of my favourite sitcom of all time. And it didn't work, did it? It seemed like a nice idea, one of these things that seemed like a nice idea on paper. John Cleese, let's get John Cleese to do Q. Didn't really work. No one's ever called a ring finger. Have they? Really? One standard issue ring finger? No one's, it's a ring. It's a fucking ring. Sorry, I shouldn't swear. Anyway, so yeah, then we leave there and we go to Iceland. And there, it is exactly 1 hour in. 1 hour on the clock when we go to Iceland. Cometh the hour, cometh the crap. It all starts to go painfully wrong from there. The Ice Palace looks naff. When the Ice Palace is blown up, it's a model shot. And this is some 20 odd years after For Your Eyes Only. Christatos Lair, when it's blown up in Albania, when Columbo and Bond go to Christatos Lair in For Your Eyes Only, that's a model shot done by Derek Meddings. That's better than the model shot of the Ice Palace blowing up 20 years later in Die Another Day. What did they know then in 1981 that they didn't know in 2002? So, no. And it's all just a mess from then on. There's really awful dialogue, the Big Bang Theory, oh, I'm sure he got the thrust of it, all that, oh, come on. And Toby Stephens just becomes more and more cliched and more over the top, and it just all becomes, and again you've got this car chase across the ice with these, Zhao's got a car that's got so many weapons in it, there can't be any room for anything car in it. It doesn't, where's the engine go? You've got all this stuff, where's the car bits? How can any of that work with everything in it? Come on. And then the Aston Martin's a bit OTT, and there's some nice bits, and they also, Lee Tam Hoorie, or the editing starts to be all fast cutting and slow moves, and it's starting to feel like a precursor to a Fast and the Furious movie, and it just doesn't feel like a Bond movie anymore, and it all starts to fall apart. So we get the big reveal, Rosamund Pike, Barry, yeah, like we didn't know already. And then, oh, CGI number 2. Then we come to CGI number 2. Yeah, it's so bad. I'm not even going to spend too much time talking about it. The windsurfing thing is just, it's just bloody awful in every way possible. And it's unforgivable. And I've heard a rumour that the company who were hired to do it struggled to get work again, and I'm not surprised. But the thing is that it should never have made the cut. It should never have been in the movie in the first place. Anyone with any sort of sensibility would have looked at it and said, no, that's kind of got to be out. That can't work. So yeah, they kind of hung themselves out to dry there. So that's just to wash the wine down. So yeah, and there's all sort of other things. Mr. Kill, really? You called someone Mr. Kill? I mean, how much time did you spend on that? We've got a henchman, what would we call him? We've had Oddjob, we've had Knick Knack, we've had Jaws. Yeah, so then it's all very pedestrian from then on. We've got this battle on a plane, which again has some pretty bad CGI going on. The plane is pretty bad CGI, the helicopter at the end is pretty bad CGI, but we don't actually care how bad that CGI is because the windsurfing scene had been so spectacularly bad that we're kind of immune to any sort of semi-bad CGI from that point on. And it's all pretty brutal from that point. I'm going to turn, because you know what, I've got so many notes for this. I actually made about 3 pages, but and I'm kind of towards the end, but yeah, so we're kind of coming to the end, and the best one, one of the most enjoyable scenes, the scene that I actually laughed at tonight, and the scene that I kind of enjoyed, is the final scene with Moneypenny, with when she's doing the virtual reality glasses, and she's pretending to kind of fantasize to having sex with Bond. Yeah, that's about the only scene in the movie tonight that I kind of laughed at and smiled at, and I got a bit of a warmth out of. and Samantha Bond is great in that moment, plays it really well. It's a nice bit of comedy. And then again, we've got the laying on the I'm the world's biggest innuendo fan, right? I love an innuendo. I'll take any innuendo that's going. I'm not even going to go for the obvious line there, but the innuendo between Bond and Jinx at the end, no, it's too much. Come on, it really is. It's, again, I think that was probably Lee Tamahori's decision. The invisible car, which I haven't even talked about, was apparently in the script, because this technology exists, the technology to make a tank invisible in the desert, for example, in Gulf Wars, that was what it was developed for. So that in the distance, a tank could be, it would appear invisible because these cameras would reflect the image back on itself. And in the script that Purvis and Wade had written, they said in an interview that they had the invisible car at about a 4 or 5 out of 10. So you could kind of see it, but to the casual eye, you might have missed it in a glimpse. And apparently Lee Tamahori came on and said, no, you ramped that right up to a 9. I want the car to be totally invisible. That story made me realise that an awful lot, I think, of the decisions that were made here, and the scripting decisions that were made, and the characterisation decisions that were made, were just bad decisions by Lee Tamahori as a director. And it all, I'm not going to lay it all at his door. It can't all be his fault, because obviously other people have to sign off on things. Producers have to sign off on things. Someone signed off. Several people signed off on that CGI parascending scene. So lots of people signed off on stuff. But I think the director has a lot to answer for with this film. So yeah, film of two halves. And I said about Diamonds Are Forever that there was nothing really to get excited about. And it's the same with this. There's really not that much to get excited about. I think the fencing scene is one, unlike Diamonds Are Forever, there is the one scene you look forward to. I look forward to the fencing scene. I think it's fantastic. I really enjoy that. The opening torture stuff is great. I like that. But beyond that, I think they were trying to be bold. And I think it's an example of Bond should not use CGI unless it 100% has to, and even then only to add a little touch of finesse to something, not make it the be all and end all of a scene. And I think that's become quite clear, and they learned that lesson, because all the films since have used CGI liberally, but in a way that is not that obvious, and in a way that just adds that bit of clarity and finesse to the scenes when required. So that's Die Another Day. So yeah, and now I suppose I've got to do the next Bond movie, which we'll see what I'm doing next. And yeah, I've what I've done again, just to explain that I've taken out the Daniel Craig movies because I'm going to watch them later in the year in the build up to No Time to Die, and I've got a playlist here which is just the songs. I'm going to take out Die Another Day because I've obviously already seen that, and I start off with the Bond theme, and we've got it on shuffle. So let's see what we've got next. I can't believe this. Thunderball. Really, it's like, it's my 4 least favourite Bond movies of all time. I've been the first 4 here. Again, maybe I'm getting them out of the way early doors. Thunderball, okay. It's a bit dull, but anyway, we'll see. Maybe something will come to me. I'll have an epiphany and it'll be the best Bond movie ever. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, so we'll see you soon for Thunderball. Thanks for watching, and I hope that was, that was Die Another Day. Thanks.